appreciate you being here tonight. I'd like to make one comment, just so that we all have personal expectations. On this entire discussion that we've just had here, this is a common discussion that's happening all over the state, all over the propositions. How do I vote? What do they mean? What do they understand? May I suggest to you to do the same thing and hold yourselves to the same standard that we as citizens expect our elected officials to be held to? What I mean by that is, if you're not willing to read it and understand it, then vote no. As I've traveled all over the state, one of the things that I'm discovering is that there's a lot of anger at our elected officials, our representatives in Washington, because bills are put in front of them. They have their staff members come and explain it to them and make a recommendation on how they should vote. And they don't take the time to read it themselves and to understand it and use their own reasoning to make a decision on whether or not they agree with that bill. I'm recommending that you as citizens do the same thing. If it's not worth your time to read it, and if you can't understand it because it's so convoluted, then vote no. That's what my promise to you is as a representative. Any bill that comes before me, assuming that I'm elected to the Senate, is an automatic no if I don't have time to read it. I'm not going to blindly sign off on things that impose law on myself or other citizens unless I've read it and I understand it. Now, since I'm on that subject, and I'm going to backtrack in just a second, but the other thing that you should know on this issue of bills and law is that I'm opposed to different items being slammed together into a single bill. So education being bundled with military, healthcare being bundled with finance, all kinds of things being wrapped into a single bill. If any of those kinds of things happen, I'm a no. It's not fair to me, it's not fair to you, it's not fair to the country. Okay? So let me backtrack now. My name's Ian Gilyeat. I'm running for the U.S. Senate as an independent candidate. That means I'm not affiliated with any of the parties. I'm not in the Democratic Party, I'm not in the Republican Party, the Green, the Libertarian, and I'm not a member of any activist party. The reason I say that is I'm not willing to sign allegiance to a party. My allegiance is to the Constitution and to my God. And to me that says I need to understand correct principles and correct values and adhere to those. And if a party diverges, if they swing off the path somewhere, that's their privilege to do so. I'm not going with them. Okay? That's why I'm independent. I believe the Constitution is a divinely inspired document. I believe that there was divine intervention in the framing of this country. I believe that divine intervention can occur still in our lives and in this country, and that we can remain a great country as long as we acknowledge those correct principles, that we adhere to the Constitution, that we understand why this government was framed the way that it was, to protect our property, to protect our lives, and to protect our individual freedoms. That's what the federal government was designed to do and intended to do. All other powers, and I know there's enumerated powers in the Constitution, when you look through those, that's what we the people and the states gave to the federal government. That's their responsibility and that's their role. I'm of the opinion that that's what they should be doing. Everything else devolves to the citizens, to the people, and to the states. So the other thing you can expect from me is to protect states' powers. So when the citizens of Arizona want to enact a bill on immigration that aligns itself with federal law that is already standing and in place, my duty as a senator is to protect the powers of that state to do so. Okay? Alright, so let me come back to a question that showed up earlier. This whole issue of being a write-in candidate. The laws in Arizona are, might I say, uneven. Okay? What I mean by that is, in order to get on the ballot, you have to gather a certain number of signatures. For a party member, you have to gather 0.5% of the voters that are registered in that party. So in the two major parties, that's about 5,200 and 5,600 signatures. For an independent has to gather 3% of everybody else that's not in a party. So that's a 6x multiplier. Instead of 0.5%, it's 3%. Now, what that does and translates into numbers, the state is divided almost equally today 3 ways. Across the Democrats, the Republicans, and the Independents, or no party declared. It is almost equally split across the state. So if you think there's a 3-party split, there is. 2 of them are formed as parties, the other third are not formed as a party, but there is a third of the registered voters in this state that are not in a party. Okay? So as an independent, I would need 28,000 plus signatures to get on the ballot versus the 5,000 or so for the major parties. That's a monumental task. Even with 200 plus volunteers, it was not enough to get on the ballot. So that's why I'm not on the ballot. So that's why if you want to vote for me, and I'm asking for your vote, you have to write my name on the ballot. I'm still registered and filed with the Secretary of State. You can go on his website. You can see that I'm listed there. I've done all of the filings with the Federal Elections Commission. I've filed Form 1, filed Form 2. I've exceeded the financial thresholds. All of those things. So when you write my name on the ballot, it does get tabulated. If you write somebody else's name on the ballot, your neighbor, J.D. Hayworth, Jim Deacon, anybody else that's not part of this election cycle, it does not get tabulated. In Arizona, there's something called a loser's law. If you ran in the primary in a party and you lost, you cannot run in the general election, and it doesn't matter if you want to be a write-in, you can't be. If people write your name on the ballot, it doesn't count. It doesn't get tabulated because there's a loser's law in Arizona. Okay.